Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar by HYCU. It's called The SaaS Data Threat, How to Weather the Perfect Storm. Since we still have people jumping on, we're going to give it about 30 seconds for you all to get comfortable, get your coffee, bio break, and then come back and be ready for this webinar. We have a very special offer, some giveaways, and a lot to talk about today. So within the next 30 seconds, we're going to start. Thank you. All right, let's get started, folks. So before we move on to the agenda and the giveaways, a couple of housekeeping items. This session will be recorded. The recording itself will be available to you in an MP4 file. The deck itself will be available to you, and you will receive all of the calls to action and emails, and it will all be wrapped up for you. So with that, let's get started in a couple of introductions. Who are these folks speaking to us on this webinar today? My name is Andy Fernandez, and I'm the Director of Product Management here at HYCU. A fun fact about me is that I am a world traveler. And in fact, anyone who can guess where I am currently based right now will get a $25 gift card to their best coffee shop of choice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unblur my background, and I'm going to give you a couple fun facts. You have the entire call to decide and guess where I am calling from. So this is my actual background. I am calling from Central America, and there are 8 volcanoes within 100 miles away from me. So remember, 8 volcanoes around for me within 100 miles, Central America. Whoever guesses first will receive a gift card. Mark, on to you.
Hey, everybody. I know where Andy is, but I won't give any more hints. I think that was pretty good already. So yeah, my name is Mark Nijmeijer. I'm part of the product management team here at HYCU. Very excited to talk to you today. I have an exciting demo for you. One of the lesser known things, at least if you don't know me that well, I'm actually part of a competitive barbecue team. It's my stress-free time away from this high-tech job and so on, making some smoke, making good food, hanging out with friends. So a lot of fun, a lot of good times in the barbecue world. Andy, back over to you.
Thank you, Mark. So with that being said, we're also going to be providing a giveaway. This will be a Patagonia Storm 10 jacket. I can tell you while I was hiking this weekend, it was very cold. I wish I had this jacket myself, but the winner will be announced at the end of the session. You have to be attending the entire session, and the more participate, the more likely you are to be able to win the Storm 10 jacket. So with that being said, let's actually get to the matter at hand. So the focus of today's agenda is really going to be around 2 things. The first one is really defining and laying down the responsibilities within a SaaS environment. Is the vendor responsible? Is the customer responsible? What are the scenarios where this actually matters? We're then going to turn and focus on how ransomware has evolved to exploit SSO providers as well. Think Okta, AD, Duo. We're going to provide you a checklist explicitly on how to be able to protect your Okta data, how to be able to protect your configurations, and all of the SaaS platforms that your organization uses. And then Mark's actually going to show you how you can do this today with HYCU. If you stay to the end as well, there will be a special offer for you to immediately be able to start protecting your organization as well. And of course, there's going to be a Q&A. There's a Q&A section already. If you look at your Zoom control panel, if you have any questions, please put it on there and we will answer every single one of your questions. If there's hundreds of questions, then we will make sure that if we don't get to it on the call, we will email you directly, and Mark and I will jump on and answer any possible question you have in the organization.
If there's hundreds of questions, Andy, then we did something wrong.
That is fair. That is fair. Or we've said some outrageous things, Mark. Now, what I want to get to at the beginning here is, even before talking about how to protect, how to recover the security components, we have to talk about responsibility. When you go back 4 or 5 years ago, no organization thought that they had to protect Microsoft 365. No one thought. And then after certain disasters, people realized that Microsoft follows a shared responsibility model, which what that actually means is that Microsoft is responsible for the system, but the customers are responsible for their data that they plug into that system. Now, it's not just Microsoft 365, it's every single cloud and SaaS platform that you use. The way I like to explain it is, think of it as a parking garage. Let's say Mark is trying to go out for some drinks or some dinner, and he needs to go and park his car in a garage. The garage company, right, the vendor, think of them as a SaaS vendor, is responsible for letting Mark park, that Mark can pay, and then Mark can come back and he's able to use the services as he pleases, so he doesn't get a ticket. But what if somebody steals something from Mark's car? What if they scratch his car? What if they just take the whole car? The parking garage does not take any responsibility for damages to the vehicle. The same applies to SaaS. Atlassian, Okta, DocuSign, they're responsible for the system to make sure that you can access. But if your data is encrypted, if it's corrupted, there's a direct attack on you, or even just a mistake, you are ultimately responsible for the recovery of that data. And if you don't believe me, I'd like to show you a couple of examples. And if you think about some of the SaaS applications that you guys use every day, put them on the chat, because during this, we can even go to their website and show you exactly what they mean around a shared responsibility model. But here are three very large companies, very important platforms, and here's what they say. Whether it's Okta, whether it's Atlassian, Salesforce, they all have a variation of the diagram, but it all says the same thing. We will make sure that we host and keep the system available. You need to make sure that you protect your data, that you recover your data, and even that you are compliant. So what this really means is the onus is not on the SaaS vendor to keep customers compliant and protected. It's on the customers themselves to be able to say, can I protect? Can I recover my data? Am I compliant? This is a massive shift in the thinking where, for some reason, there's been this massive myth that organizations are no longer responsible for their data within SaaS. But why do we even have to think about this? Isn't the whole reason that we move to SaaS because they're going to take care of everything? Well, let's think about three critical reasons why, just like you had a server or data center deployment on-prem, if you're now leveraging that application as a SaaS or as a cloud service, there are three things that you are still responsible for and you need to worry about. The first one is the one that happens all the time, operational data loss. Let's say you have an accidental deletion, corruption, bugs, version control issues, or even worst case, a rogue admin. These are deletions that happen all the time. You need to be able to recover that and restore directly to production. Let's say you lose your roles and policies in Okta, critical projects within Atlassian, critical mailboxes within M365. These deletions happen all of the time, whether it's predictable things or even anything attributed to Murphy's Law, they will happen. Now, the second one is less frequent, but much more ominous. And it's really not only on outages, which the SaaS vendor does have to help with, it's around cyber attacks. And how will an organization be able to recover from a direct or supply chain attack? And the last one is you are still responsible for your own security or compliance. If you had data retention needs, if you had offsite backup needs on the on-prem version of your application, you still have them for your SaaS application. These are the three core reasons. And operational data loss happens every single day. Mark and I experience that ourselves, whether it's Notion, Asana, you name it, something is always screwed up and we have to go and recover back to a point in time. That is just the nature of working with humans. But what I want to focus on a little bit here, though, is around the evolution of ransomware and how these ransomware attacks are now targeting your SaaS applications, your SSO providers, and what that actually means. Now, I know there's an entire AI craze around ChatGPT, Bard, and Claude, and all of the value that they bring us, but guess what? There's an evil twin out there as well. And it's not just Worm GPT or Evil GPT or Wolf GPT. There's so many different versions there where they have accelerated the pace of an attack. What I mean by this is 5 years ago, you could go to the dark web and you can go get ransomware as a service, right? You can purchase some scripts, purchase a couple of emails, write your own HTML template, and execute your own campaign and go and directly attack a vendor or their customers. Now, you can simply, within one interface, without any code, customize the creation of malware, customize the way that you're going to inject the malware, and even get a co-branded, beautiful email landing page that you can use to spoof people. And what this means is it's not just about the same business as, hey, ransomware is damaging. It's only going to get worse. So even before we were seeing the adoption of AI within cybercrime, you already saw the average ransom or the price of a ransom increase by 800K in 2023. You saw a nearly 500 million attacks in 2022. And the average downtime, and this is average, is 22 days. But when you add things like Worm GPT and Evil GPT, not only is the volume going to grow, but the quality of these attacks are only going to get better. Better scripting, better codes, better emails, better data collection for social engineering. And what they're also putting their scope towards is getting access through the single sign-on providers as well. And then from there, they're going to town. They're going to go everything from your ESXi servers all the way to your SaaS applications and gain access and start encrypting the things that matter. Now, with that being said, let's actually talk about where these hackers are explicitly focused. And we've now already seen a tons of publicity around different organizations all around the world that have been victims of folks trying to exploit the single sign-on provider. But think about it. If there was any piece of software, any platform that contained the keys to the kingdom, it's Okta, it's Azure AD or Entra AD, whatever it's called today, and things like Duo. Those are the things that organizations use to protect, to lock down, and to secure access, roles, and permissions to all of the SaaS applications. Think about that. The entire data estate resides with access in something like Okta. So if you're a hacker trying to find a way into VMware, trying to find a way into ServiceNow or Jira, Workday, you name it, where are you going to go? Obviously, you're going to target the single sign-on provider. And you already seen tons of breakdown, tons of activity regarding what Okta has measured of sophisticated social engineering attacks. Because if you can become a super user in Okta, you can do anything. You have access to the keys of the kingdom. Now, Okta is an incredible service, right? It's a platform that provides critical value, but it must be protected, it must be secured, and it must be recoverable when something happens and somebody tries to go after. But let's take an example of a very recent high profile attack that actually happened via the SSO provider. Once again, somebody delivered social engineering scheme to access Okta. They upgraded themselves to give them the capabilities to access everything. Then they began encrypting and slowly, incrementally accessing other parts of the infrastructure that was most critical and then demanded a ransom. Now, there were 8 days of complete downtime. 8 days. Now, there are still several disruptions happening today, but in total, so far, there's been $100 million in damaging and a ton of time and resources for the rest of the year spent on having to reconfigure their Okta environment. Remember, these are intricate webs of roles, policies, access that touch every single app that make up the tier one infrastructure. Now, imagine you have to rebuild all of that. Now, how would a effective and native backup and recovery service have helped? Now, what I'm going to mention here is we are not going to talk about preventing attacks. That is not what we're going to talk about. There are thousands of tools out there focusing on how to prevent attacks. What we're talking about today is an insurance policy of when an attack happens, that you're able to recover and restore back to your production environment to a previous point in time. So let's take that exact example in Vegas. Let's say that because they did notice suspicious activity, they just didn't know where it was happening, you decided that it was time to restore all roles, access, and policies to a point in time before. Maybe it was a day before, but maybe just in case to avoid dwell times, it was 2 weeks before. You restore all of the roles, all of the access policies, everything that granted folks access to something to a point in time where it was safe. Not only are those roles, policies, and configurations rolled back, but then you ask everyone to immediately reset their passwords. Ideally, this is in an automated example. And what this means is, instead of being down for so long trying to figure out what's going on, you can isolate the incident, restore back to a point in time from an immutable copy, and then reset access so that what became an 8-day, $100 million incident maybe was a couple of hours to making sure that you locked everything down and you secured access. There's a lot more information, and Mark's actually going to show you in a demo how HYCU is able to do this. But the point here is cyber criminals are explicitly targeting SSO providers. And it's incredibly important to make sure that those configurations and that information is held. Now, what we're also going to be able to do, guys, if you have any questions on this breakdown, we're going to answer them all at the end of the chat. So please write down your question in the Q&A, and we will make sure to address it. Now, one thing that I have a question for you all is a bit of a trivia question. And remember, the more people that answer the trivia question, the more likely you are to win that Storm 10 jacket. Now, how many SaaS applications do you think a mid-sized organization uses? Now, what I'm going to mention here is specifically how we rank a mid-sized organization. And this is a organization with anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 employees. How many SaaS applications does the average organization use there? The bonus component of this is what percentage of these applications were actually paid for outside of IT. So I'm going to give everybody a second to put it in the chat. Make sure your answer is recorded. If you also have any questions, please add them to the chat because we're going to answer all of them on this call. But remember, how many does an average organization of 1,500 employees have when it comes to SaaS applications? What percentage of those are actually paid for and managed by IT? So I'm going to give everybody 10, 15 seconds to put in your answer on the chat. Mark, you let me know when you see a couple of answers, and then from there, we'll go into some myth busting.
Yeah, I see some answers coming in. Just Ali was asking where to answer the question. Just type it in the Q&A box. We can see those, Ali. But yeah, there's some answers coming in. Some really good questions as well that we'll answer at the end. Some very thoughtful questions. So very happy to see that.
Beautiful, perfect. All right, folks, are we ready? So the first question is, and this is based on actual conversations that we have with our CISOs. And because we talk to CISOs that are our customer base, our prospects, our partners, and we ask these questions. And one of them said, hey, look, we only have a few SaaS applications. And the ones that we mainly have are M365 and Salesforce. And then they said, look, because of this small amount of SaaS applications, they're all protected, they're paid for by IT, they're managed by IT. But when you actually look at a study that was done by Xylo does a lot of tracking, both from a financial and tech perspective on SaaS. And every year they come out with a SaaS management index that says exactly how much organizations are paying for SaaS. And this is looking at midsize and enterprise with a sample size of over 10,000. So this is a perfect, crystal clear view to the average organization. Now, one of the caveats I'll have here is, of course, if you're within public sector, if you're within the federal government, of course, there's a different rule set there. Those organizations do have no SaaS footprint. But when we talk about the commercial space, even healthcare, even financial services, there is a massive SaaS footprint. So the first myth here is that organizations only have a couple. When you look at the average organization, the average mid-sized organization, they have 217 SaaS apps. When you get into the enterprise, there are hundreds more that are involved there. That's issue number one. Organizations are not realizing the footprint that they have. The reason they're not realizing that footprint is because so many of these SaaS services are bought directly by sales, by marketing, by finance, by HR. And when you look at that same mid-sized organization profile, with a sample size of over 10,000, IT controlled 27% of their SaaS spend and manage only 23% of the SaaS. There is a massive footprint out there of organizations that do not have SaaS applications that are being protected, that remember, they are responsible for protecting them. So with that, we'll see in the chat who is closest and we'll evaluate that for the giveaway as well. But enough of the trivia time. Let's actually talk about a plan to action. And Mark is going to go exactly into the demo on how HYCU is able to help with that plan of action. So there are two things that every single organization that has a SaaS footprint has to do. The first one is you have to go and identify what are all those applications, and you need to expose the ones that are unmanaged, that are unprotected. Because remember, every single SaaS app that you use is part of the shared responsibility model. It means that your organization is responsible for recovering and protecting that data. So you have to map out the estate. The second is you have to make sure that the critical configurations of your SSO provider are also protected, that they're backed up, and that they are in an immutable copy off-site to be recovered in case of a breach or even just a misconfiguration. Now, when you're going through this exercise and you're trying to map out all of the SaaS applications that you have, because this is really a risk management exercise, you have to go and identify every single one of these applications to understand what the problem is. Now, the checklist that we've made here is, first of all, you have to go and line item by line item, be able to identify as part of the directory within Okta or AD, what are all of the SaaS applications that are tied to it? And also look at what are the cloud services as well. It's not just about the SaaS applications, it's all of the microservices within the cloud. How are you protecting AWS IAM, KMS? How are you protecting serverless functions, containerized applications? Those are all disparate services as well that must be mapped out. The second piece is when you take a look at something like Okta and AD, they will show you that there's a platform that you're signed into, right? And they'll say, hey, look, you're leveraging Okta to sign into Atlassian. But guess what? Atlassian has dozens of applications. You could be using Jira, Confluence, Jira Service Management, Trello, so many different types of applications. You need to explicitly map out those as well. That applies to large platform ecosystems like Salesforce, like Atlassian, even ServiceNow. Then you need to be able to categorize these by departments and start exposing which one of these have not been backed up. Now, this could be somebody manually exporting the data and hoping they never have to recover, or organizations that are simply not even recovering or protecting any of this data. And for that percentage of shadow IT, you have to make sure that organizations have a movement to be able to move everything towards Okta and Azure AD, because that's a critical component as well. That's number one, right? Being able to protect your estate. But number two is you have to protect the crown jewels of Okta. Your SSO data is incredibly important, whether it's specific entities, entire organizational structures, or even specific configurations, roles, policies, and schema that are the things that keep up your applications going. You have to protect those. People are going after them. You have to make sure they're protected. The guidelines that we provide, and this is what we do for our customers, even for ourselves, is you have to at least schedule daily backups at a minimum. We actually recommend a higher RPO here because this is so critical and it's such a small amount of data that you should be able to back this up as much as possible. But you also have to be able to enable the granular recovery of this. Because if you notice that it's a specific role, a permission access controls that need to be restored, you need to be able to restore the needle in the haystack instead of recovering the whole haystack and hoping you can get back up and running. The other piece, though, is the moment that you recover, you automatically have to reset all passwords. This is the only way to kick somebody out during a breach. And throughout all of this, you have to keep logs, you have to keep event tracking, you have to have notification, and you also want to have role-based access control inside the backup as well. Not just the role-based access control within Okta, but for the backup activities as well. Is there an admin that can restore? Is there a super admin? Is there somebody that can assign backup policies? That has to be part of the equation. And ultimately, you also have to test the recovery process. This is critical. If you don't test the backup, you do not have a backup. So these are objective guidelines. So even if you've never talked to HYCU again, these are critical things that we will send you in a PDF for your organization to use because we highly, highly, highly recommend. We're an Okta Ventures organization. They've invested in us, and we are also invested in protecting their customers as well, with the ability to protect those configurations and map out SaaS. Now, that's enough of me talking. I think the most critical component here is that we actually see a product demo and how this actually works. Now, what Mark's going to do, Mark is going to not only show step one, which is how to expose all of these SaaS applications and identify risk, but he's also going to show how to protect an SSO provider, specifically Okta, how to protect, how to make it immutable, how to make the data recoverable again as well. So with that being said, I'm going to leave Mark to it. Mark, the floor is yours to show us some product.
Awesome. Thanks, Andy. Great introduction over there. So yeah, it really is all around us, right? All of these risk factors and so on. So let me share my screen and we can do a little bit of show and tell on how we think about things in the world of SaaS, data protection, et cetera, et cetera. So this is HYCU Protege, multi-tenant backup as a service solution. That you can use to basically discover and protect all of your data services. We have, of course, integrated with, for instance, Okta as an identity provider. So logging in is, of course, very, very simple. I can just click the sign in with Okta button, and within a few seconds, it drops me into the dashboard of HYCU Protege. The first thing I want to talk about is what is a discovery tool that we call rgraph, and that's this pretty thing over here on the left. Let me first put it in the circle mode. So basically what we've done with rgraph is we've built integration into Okta and into Azure AD, and we actually use all of the information within those tools to discover services, data sources that are in use within your organization, right? So if I zoom in a little bit and open up some of these guys, you can see all of the sources basically that we discover. We maintain a database that gives us information about these services as well. I like the structured view much better. It fits better with how my brain works. So I typically switch to this guy over here. But over here, you can see all of the services that we have configured in our demo environment, and there's a whole bunch of them that don't have classification yet. But basically, at the moment we discover a service, we overlay this with information around the data protection capabilities of those SaaS services. Like Andy said, a lot of the SaaS services, they are the parking structure, the parking garage, right? They're not responsible for the data that is stored, for the valuables in your car, the data that is stored within your SaaS application. There was actually a question in the chat using the parking garage example. Can you describe your product? I always position it as an insurance policy, right? If something goes wrong, we can very quickly and very cheaply help you recover of those things that went wrong, right? So for instance, Slack, they do not give you any capabilities around, is there self-service restore of deleted data? Is there backup automation that is user control? Can I actually export my data that is stored in Slack? Yes, we can all download a single attachment. That is fine, but you cannot do it at a structural level. And we see that over and over again in all of those services that are out there. We only turn this little shield to green when they actually check all three boxes. Then we think it's a good service. On the left-hand side, you see all of the data services that we already have protected. So if I scroll down into engineering, over here, for instance, you see Okta, and we provide the information here. Do we protect those data sources, right? We don't protect the learnings, but we do protect Okta. And once we protect it, are we actually meeting the compliance goals? Are we meeting the SLAs that the business has given us for the data protection? Do I take backups frequently enough? Do I store my data, etc.? Do I have enough copies of my data, right? The infamous 3-2-1 rule. The good thing here is we roll all of that up to the department level, and eventually we roll that up to the organization level. So within one quick glance, somebody like a CIO in your organization, or a CISO, or the VP of infrastructure, they can take an assessment of the risk, right? And this is what Liam was asking about. It's like, how do we help you provide an assessment of risk? And this here we can see we protect about 1/3 of the data sources that we have discovered. But from those 1/3, we're actually doing really well in terms of compliance. 51 out of 62 are actually meeting the compliance goals. And of course, this is a demo environment, so there's always things going on. Yesterday, it was 59 out of 61, I believe. So something, somebody's changed something somewhere. But basically, in one view, you can see all of those services and really have that assessment of risk that I was talking about. If I double click a little bit, and I'll go into engineering, so we can actually look at how we protect Okta. Right, and he was step 2. Step 1 was visualize, discover, etc., etc. But step 2 really is around how do I actually protect the data? How do I apply that insurance policy? It's very, very simple. Once again, I am now zoomed in onto the engineering part of the world, and this is all RBAC integrated. So this is an RBAC domain. I can set up roles that basically provide backup, restore, or backup capabilities to certain people, and they can only stay within the engineering realm. Right, so if I zoom in on this data sources over here, you'll see that I have configured a bunch of Atlassian sources, but I also have discovered my Okta. Setting up connection to Okta to basically do the discovery, do the backups, and do the restores is very, very easy. Right, let me show that really quickly. We find Okta in the marketplace, and you can see all of the sources that we already can protect today. But basically, to set up the connection to Okta or to Atlassian or to any of the services that we protect is very simple. You give us the URL, and you give us an API token, and that's all we need. Once we have discovered, you can protect all of these projects or instances, or however you call it. And that is very easy as well. It's just a few clicks. You select the source, you do assign policy. We ship with a few policies that we have predefined, and the policy really defines what is my RPO. How often do I take backups? How long do I want to keep the backups around for? And where do I store the backups? What piece of storage should I use? We always connect to your storage. We never keep copies of your data within our storage, right? Because we don't want to touch your data. We don't want to have those data governance issues and so on. But in this case, you can see Okta is protected with silver, which means that twice a day, actually, we're taking a backup, right? You can see yesterday at 6:15 a.m., last night at 6:15, and this morning at 6:15, we're taking backups. And so basically we take a full backup every time over there. The power of the solution, of course, the setting up the protection is very easy. Like I said, right? Just a few clicks, assign the policy. We set up the schedules, we execute the jobs, we do the storage management, we age out all backups and so on. All of that is set and forget, right? So at the moment you have assigned the policy, you basically have instated that insurance policy. You are insured at this point in time. But if something happens, and that could be an accidental deletion, or that could be somebody going in and maliciously making changes, doing deletions, doing encryptions, and so on, that's where the power of HYCU really shines. Here you can see the level of granularity with which we can restore, right? Of course, we can restore an entire Okta organization in case there was a complete wipeout. But in case somebody messed up a policy or disabled the policy or deleted the policy, I can actually go down to a single policy within Okta and restore that, right? So I can basically click in, and this is going to take a little bit of time, so bear with me while we basically scan the backup for all of the information that is within that is stored within that backup. But basically you can go down all the way to a single policy, and in just a few clicks and in just a few minutes, you're back up and running. You potentially could have recovered from something that happens, like what Andy was saying, in Vegas. And we hear this over and over and over again, that people just at the moment they go in, they of course want to get to the keys of the kingdom and start disrupting your business as soon as possible. Like I said, we always connect to storage you own. It's a very important mantra for us here within HYCU. So at the moment, you can store your backups in S3, in Google Cloud Storage. And recently, we built a connection into Wasabi as well. And you'll see us expanding that portfolio over the next few releases, over the next few months. Eventually, I want to be able to make it possible to store your data back on-prem as well, right? So you can actually repatriate your SaaS data and have it within your data center, so it's extra secure over there. All right, so we should be about there. And once we have scanned the database over here, and now I can open it up, and you can actually see that we can go into a single policy, and basically with just a few clicks, I can restore that and be back up and running in just a minute or two. So very, very easy, very, very user-friendly. It is one-click assign policy, set and forget. And then at the moment something happened, somebody had an oopsie, you can restore. Of course, we support a much broader set than just Okta, right? You probably recognize a lot of these names on the screen. All of those you can protect in just the same way. The beauty is, at the moment I do a restore, for instance, for, let's say, Jira Work Management, I now can restore projects and employees, right? So the beauty of integration, the power of the integration really is whatever I'm protecting, I'm talking the native object types for those sources. Like I said, policies, we ship with a few, but of course you can create your own policies, right? You have full control over how often, how long, et cetera, and then within targets, I set up the connection to storage, and here you can see we connect to Amazon S3, we can connect to Google Cloud, we can connect to Wasabi right now, and like I said, we're quickly expanding that portfolio. Of course, task management, event management, you can set up email hooks or web hooks for events. We come with a very strong reporting set. And of course, everything is RBAC driven, right? So you can set up users that have full control or very granular control over just one or two applications. Everything is built into the solution. So recapping really quickly, dashboards with rGraph. Let me go back to the organization over here. We actually give you a quick connection guide, so you can connect to Okta Azure AD. You can discover all of your sources. You can very quickly connect to your storage, assign the policy, and then start protecting and eventually recovering the SaaS applications. Andy, anything you want to add? Anything I missed talking about? Any questions that came in while I was talking?
No, I think the storage component is incredibly important. There are several
Yeah.
questions around availability zones, data residency as well, but the most important part here is it's your choice around storage. What that means is you have full customization of the storage target. Uh, from a pricing perspective, or even if you want to enable immutability, we highly, highly recommend that you use immutable storage targets because that way you have a guaranteed ransomware proof copy of your configurations in Okta to roll back to. That's extremely important. Now, it is easy to provide a managed storage, but guess what? If you're in healthcare, if you're in financial services, if you're in any major vertical, it's incredibly difficult to justify keeping your data in yet somebody else's storage. It's about your control and your ability to immediately be able to recover, not wait for a managed storage. You get full customization here as well. So that's a critical, critical piece of what we're able to do, Mark.
No, yeah, perfect. And yeah, thanks for mentioning immutable storage, worm storage. Of course, we fully support worm. So if it's enabled on the storage target, then we automatically will detect it and basically do the right thing in terms of aging out backups only when the worm timeout kind of expires, right? Because you don't want people to go underneath you and delete your backups that you work so hard on setting up and build that insurance policy. Awesome. I think let me do a quick check of questions and so on. No, I think we're good. I'll hand it back over to you, Andy, so we can close it out and then see if we have a winner.
Perfect. Let me share my screen again. And then you guys, can you see this?
Yes, we can.
All right, perfect. So what I want to be able to do is recap something, provide an insight into the offer that we have for everybody on this call, and then we're going to get into the winner and then all of the questions that we're seeing right now in the Q&A. So one thing that I want to recap here, it's not just about Okta, it's about all of your SaaS applications and your cloud services that need to be protected. But when it comes to Okta, what HYCU is able to do that no other enterprise backup vendor can do is first actually use Okta itself to map out and help you build a plan to protect all SaaS applications that you see. That's the first thing, being able to see that physical estate. We talked about people were guessing 5, 10, 15 SaaS apps. No, I guarantee you, you're going to see dozens, if not hundreds. You get to use your own Okta environment to be able to visualize that with HYCU that is built in. The second piece is you can make sure that if there is an incident, whether it's an accident, a breach, malicious, you can create ransomware proof backups. You can always recover those configurations, whether at the org level or specific configurations below, you're able to recover. So instead of having a disastrous event where you're reconfiguring Okta and trying to deal with the downtime, you simply go back to a safe point in time. And the last bit here is you also ensure that this data, not only of Okta, but of all of your other SaaS applications that you protect, are in your hands. Off-site, the 3-2-1 rule is still a thing. It's still critical. You are still supposed to be following the 3-2-1 rule, even if you're within a SaaS application as well. So being able to have that offsite in your storage where you control the residency, the zones, the network configurations, that is extremely critical in a world where ransomware attacks are happening every few seconds. So with that being said, this is a limited time offer that we're going to provide. And if you register or simply email Mark and I, we will get you started on this and show you exactly how this works. But within this offer with HYCU for Okta, you're going to be able to map out all of your services. Just what you saw Mark do there in that demo environment, that's a live HYCU production environment. You will be able to see the same thing for you. You will be able to automatically automate all of the backups into immutable storage for Okta Workforce Identity Cloud and Customer Identity Cloud. And most importantly, you can guarantee rapid granular recovery or restore of these configurations. What I cannot emphasize enough is we are not a cybersecurity company. We're not a prevention company. What we're saying is these breaches will happen, accidents will happen. You need to be able to recover your configurations across the board. You need to be able to do it across all of your SaaS applications as well. Now, with that being said, if you are interested, you will be able to reply to us in an email. You will receive a copy of the deck of recording, and you will also receive that resilience checklist, step 1 and 2 that we created for Okta and SaaS. If you're ready to get started, you can actually register here. There's a link in the chat with access here. Register there, and a customer success engineer will show you exactly how we're able to help you with that. So with that being said, Mark, I am going to mention a couple things around the winner. The first thing that I'm going to mention, though, is the winner of the $25 gift card guessing. Now, there are actually two winners. Reason being is Gonzalo Jimenez. You have guessed Guatemala. You are correct, my friend. Absolutely. But Khan, you also guessed a specific city. Now, I'm not exactly in Antigua, but I'm very close. I'm in Lake Atitlan. So congratulations, Khan and Gonzalo. We'll reach out to you for your gift card. Great eye, especially Khan, to know that I'm near Antigua. I was just there over the weekend. It's a beautiful place. I recommend everybody goes. Now, with the winner of the Patagonia jacket, what I'm going to mention is I'm not going to provide last names because we want to make sure from a GDPR perspective, but we will email you. And the person that has won is Jonas. Jonas, you have won this jacket. We will contact you and we will let you know, and we will make sure that we ship this your way. Thank you so much. And folks, a lot of you were pretty close to guessing, so I want to congratulate there, but special thanks to everybody who's won today. Now let's actually get to the brass tacks. There are a ton of questions. We've got around 20 minutes to answer them. Let's get started. Mark, what I'll do is I'll kind of scroll through the chat and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, sounds good. I'm scrolling right now as well. There's definitely some really good questions, and I answered some of them as part of the demo. But what do you see out there, Andy?
All right, so the first one's actually, Cindy, this is a great question, and it's something that we from a product perspective, think about a lot, and it's, are backups or protection also using generative AI to compete with ChatGPT trend for attacks? If so, how effective is generative AI, good guy, versus generative AI, bad guy, to protect the customer? Mark, you want to take that one? I have my own opinion on that, but I want you to take that one first.
Yeah, let me take a crack at that. So it's definitely a very interesting question, and I think a very timely and topical topic as well, right? With everybody focusing on AI and so on. We're very strongly internally looking at how can we more and more apply AI to our backups and so on. Right now, as I showed in the demo, it relies on you as the admin to basically make sure that you have that insurance, make sure that you are having the backups and so on, and making sure that you have those layers of security, right? In the end, I always say backup is like that last layer of defense, right? Your last known good copy of your data. But of course, there's a lot of layers that you can put in front, right? Network security, anomaly detection, all that kind of stuff. That eventually will build in some of those capabilities in our solution as well. But we really focus on being able to react to something that has happened rather than being very proactive. Can we do more? Of course we can do more, and that's why we're investigating right now to see where it makes sense to expand our product portfolio. Andy?
No, absolutely. And Cindy, one thing I'll mention too is these AI workloads are not yet running on AI, right? So organizations all have a mix of on-prem, right, virtual machines that they're leveraging, some form of cloud services, instance, serverless, or all these different types of workloads that are running. Our focus is to protect those workloads. Once you start to see an AI-based workloads, like we'll have to protect that as well. But for your question on good guy versus bad guy, that's a really good question. Unfortunately, if you look at the history of cybersecurity, the scale of innovation has sat with the criminal, and they bring in with a new attack. Cybersecurity industry has to react to it and have to go and patch that up or build a service to protect that. So our guess and our prediction here is that with these LLMs that are based on malicious activity, your worm GPTs, they're only going to increase the volume of attacks. And then eventually you will see AI explicit LLM backed ways to protect from that. But you're going to always see that period where the bad guys are slightly more ahead of the good guys. And that's why it's so important to have that insurance policy of recovery as well. Now,
it's
so
not,
many.
it's
go ahead, Mark.
It's not if, it's when. It's not if, it's when.
Perfect. Exactly. Now, Lily asked a question too: is how does HYCU compare up to the Salesforce platform? I'll take that one, Mark. We're not a competitor of Salesforce. What HYCU does is think of us as a shield, a way to help protect and recover your data regardless of where it is. So some customers of ours are using Salesforce for everything. Some of them are using Atlassian. Some of them are using Asana. Our goal is to protect all of them, to help them recover these workloads in case there's an accident, in case there's a misconfiguration. So it's not that we're competing with these folks, it's that we're providing that enterprise backup and recovery that's needed, whether it's because of data loss due to a mistake or a ransomware attack. But there was another important question that was asked, and Mark, I saw you answer, which was, somebody said, well, isn't the SaaS provider's responsibility to keep the data safe? Mark, how would you go about that?
So yes, of course, they have responsibility to a certain level, right? The SaaS ISV is responsible in the parking structure, is responsible for making sure that the parking structure is available, right? If something breaks, if the access gate break, they are responsible for fixing that to make sure that the service is accessible again. They are also responsible at some level to make sure that they have a copy of your data, but you never know when they took a copy of the data. It might be 2 weeks old, right? So at the moment, somebody goes in and makes a change, makes a deletion, and you call up support and say, hey, can you roll this back for me? In most cases, they say, no, this is your responsibility, it's your data. Or even if they can, it will be a complete rollback of all of your data to the last known good point, which might be 2 weeks ago, which means then that you are losing 2 weeks of work, right? So that is a really hard decision to do. With our solution, you can make sure that you have very up-to-date backups, and you're in control over what do I need to recover at what point in time, and what is the circle of that recovery? How big do I need to recover? Right, so that it gives you a lot more granular control over those kind of situations.
Thank you so much, Mark. That was an excellent explanation. But one thing I asked is everyone go check this for yourselves. At HYCU, we went out and we talked and emailed all of our SaaS platforms that we use ourselves, Salesforce, things like Marketo, even things like Atlassian. We emailed them and we asked them, say, hey, look, in case somebody deletes something, what do you guys help with? They all sent the same legal statement around the shared responsibility model. Now, some of the nicer ones will actually try and help you, but they can't give you the recovery that you need in case of an attack, especially from a configuration perspective, especially with an Okta. So if you are skeptical, please go and ask the vendors themselves, and they will explicitly tell you this. You have to protect your data. And guess what? You need to have that data in your hands. You never know if there's an attack on that SaaS or a direct attack on you. Having an offsite backup that's immutable is going to eliminate a lot of pain and a lot of reconfiguration when there's something like this happens. But Mark, there's been a ton of questions as well around storage targets. Cindy had some great questions there, and even folks mentioning additional storage targets. You want to kind of go through and provide some insight in our approach and future storage targets?
Yeah, so I definitely see some questions as well. So let me put it this way. So in our on-prem products, we have integrated with a lot of different storage targets, including things like NetApp and Nutanix files and the Dell PowerScale solution and things like that. We're slowly basically migrating that support into our SaaS-based offering, what I just showed you. Right. So today we support S3, we support Google Cloud, we support Wasabi. We're working with Backblaze. Backblaze we already support on-prem. You might have seen a press release go out, but Backblaze is going to be added to the service sometime really soon. But like I said, I want to be able to basically take our backup data and store it back on-prem as well. Right. So expect a lot more news coming out of us over the next I would say in the next quarter or two. Engineering is working hard on that right now to make sure that everything is of course performance, but most and foremost secure, right? Because in the end, it has to be all of that important data needs to be very, very secure.
Thank you so much, Mark. And something that I want to mention here as well is this is a critical priority for us because we are extremely invested in the resilience of Okta customers. We're extremely resilient in our customers that they have the ability to protect their SaaS. So that limited time offer, all I can mention is please send us an email. Mark and I will personally jump on from the product team and discuss how we can help you. Somebody asked if that compliance assessment or RGRAS was an additional charge. No, that is built into the product. That comes with your ability to protect and recover Okta. You can now go and start protecting other things. You don't lose anything by a 15-minute conversation where we help you go through that checklist, give you free access so you can check it out, and help you start protecting your data now, not next quarter. We know how the holidays work, and there's always an increase in attacks. Okta is a mission critical priority. And I promise that Mark and I will answer any other question. We will also jump on a personal demo and give you access as well. I'm going to pause there in case there are any additional questions. If for some reason, because there's been a lot of chat, we miss one, we will personally email you. For the award winners, we'll send you an email after this and get in touch to get started with you. But with that, the recording will be available. The checklist will be available. We will reach out to you. This won't be the last we continue talking about this because it is critical to protect the keys to the kingdom of your organization, which is your Okta configuration. That has to happen now. So I want to thank you all for your time, for your attention. Mark, thank you so much for the demo. Please, you know where we are. We will provide and respond to you in an email. Thank you so much and hope everyone has a good day.